Hello fellow time travelers, tonight we travel back, way back, to a time before Columbus, before smartphones, before air conditioning, all the way to what we now call the Mississippian era, around the year 1100 AD. You find yourself standing barefoot in thick, steamy grass, just outside the borders of a sprawling mound complex. The air is heavy, buzzing with insects and incense smoke. A fire crackles nearby, casting orange shadows across the earthworks. It smells like roasted fish, damp soil, and something charred you hope isn't hair. And you? You're the newest corn farmer in town. Spoiler, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video, subscribe, and ring that bell so you'll always know when we are off to a new time-traveling adventure together. In return, I promise to stand out by offering you the most interesting and valuable content by which to help you drift off to sleep. Go ahead and post your location and what time it is where you're tuning in from. I always love seeing our little tribe of sleepy time travelers from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up on a reed mat inside a small wattle and daub house, essentially a mud-covered twig hut that smells like wet dog and yesterday's stew. It's yours now. Congrats! The walls aren't straight, the ceiling leaks, and you're 97% sure something alive is sharing the floor with you. But that's fine. What matters is what lies outside, the village of Moundville. A proper ceremonial center. Somewhere between a spiritual city-state and the world's most judgmental HOA. The mounds rise up around you like man-made hills, covered in grass but topped with wooden buildings, temples, council houses, and elite homes. You try not to gawk, but come on. These weren't built with cranes and cement mixers. Generations of hands hauled basket after basket of dirt, all to build spiritual architecture tall enough to tickle the clouds. Historians still argue whether the mounds were primarily tombs, political stages, or stairways to the spirit world, but they agree on one thing: if you trip on them, someone will laugh. You head toward the communal plaza, where an elder nods at you and points toward a patch of weedy land near the tree line. That's yours. Your cornfield. Your little piece of the world. It's also a mosquito buffet, a deer path, and a snake's dream home. You grab a digging stick and sigh. Nobody told you this was part farming, part blood sacrifice. You're surrounded by other thatch roof homes, clusters of extended families, and at least one kid who's been staring at you since sunrise. People move around purposefully, fixing nets, shaping pottery, carrying firewood on their backs like a CrossFit challenge with no prizes. You try to blend in, which is hard when your shirtless neighbor has a tattoo of a bird-human hybrid across his chest and you're still getting used to the breeze under your breechcloth. Corn, or maize, is the queen here. But she's a moody monarch. She needs good soil, careful spacing, the right timing, and constant attention. Fortunately, the Mississippians have developed the Three Sisters method, planting corn, beans, and squash together in mutual support like a veggie girl band. Unfortunately, your plot is more like a muddy heartbreak. You jab your digging stick into the ground and try to make a mound. It's less mound and more sad pancake. A woman with strong forearms and zero patience shows you how to do it right. Her technique is elegant: jab, scoop, twist, pat. Yours looks like you're trying to dig a shallow grave for a feral cat. Still, you manage to plant a few seeds. Corn goes in first. Beans come later to climb the stalks. Squash trails along the ground, choking out weeds. It's ingenious when it works. You try to focus, but you're being dive-bombed by gnats. And you're sunburned after 10 minutes. And someone's kid just threw a fishbone at your head. Back in the plaza, people prepare for a minor feast. roasted fish, some boiled chestnuts, maybe a smoked turtle or two. There's no written language here. Everything's memory, story, rhythm, and art. You overhear two elders debating whether a comet that passed last season was a sign from the upper world or just a fiery snake with indigestion. Historians still argue whether these celestial interpretations were religious, astronomical, or both, but you just nod politely and pretend you saw the snake, too. Night falls quickly. Fires pop up like glowing mushrooms across the landscape. You're handed a bowl of warm soup, something between stew and surprise. It smells faintly of onion, smoke, and regret. You slurp it down anyway. Hunger does that. You try to sleep, but your hut creaks in the breeze, and something thumps against the wall. You consider investigating, but then remember you're in 1100 CE with no flashlight, no door lock, and no tetanus shots. You pull the deerskin tighter and whisper a brief, sincere prayer to any nearby ancestors, including that smug guy who helped you plant beans and called you slow like a cold turtle. As you drift off, you hear distant drumming. Steady, soft, hypnotic. Somewhere, a night ceremony is unfolding. Fire, feathers, shadows moving in rhythm with old songs. You're not invited yet, but if you survive your first week, you might get to see it. Sleep doesn't come easily. There's too much buzzing in your ears and soreness in your back. Still, the crickets sing. The mounds stand silent. The stars burn just a bit brighter than they do in your world. And tomorrow, you've got corn to check on. You wake up with the grace of a sack of corn falling off a cart. Your spine feels like it lost a bar fight with your straw mat, and there's a suspicious squish beneath your left hip that you really hope wasn't alive last night. Outside, dawn is barely breaking, but the village is already humming. Chickens you didn't know existed are clucking somewhere, children are playing a game that seems to involve throwing bones at each other, and the smoke from a dozen cook fires makes the air taste like toasted bark. Today, you've been given a mission: prepare your three sisters' garden properly. You know, that charming cornbean squash trio you fumbled with yesterday? Yeah, they're going to need more than half-hearted pokes with a stick and some motivational whispering. You shuffle out to your patch of earth with a groan and a borrowed hoe carved from deer antler. It's less agricultural implement and more artifact from a museum that wouldn't survive a modern sandbox. You stand in front of your field. Well, field might be a generous word. It's a lumpy, semi-cleared area where grass still fights back and every root you hit makes you question your life choices. You swing the hoe down, and the soil answers with a dull thunk. It's not the loamy, dark earth you'd find on a garden block. Nope, this stuff is stubborn, wet in the wrong places, and filled with surprises, like grubs the size of thumbs and rocks that seem to laugh when your tool glances off them. The problem is drainage. The Mississippian world is lush and green, but that also means it floods unpredictably. A good corn farmer, unlike you, knows how to build up planting mounds, how to slope them subtly to shed water, how to mix ash and compost from fish bones and charred bark into the soil to encourage fertility. You do not know any of these things. You learn fast, though, mostly through failure. A woman from the neighboring hut, who you now refer to as the unspoken boss of all things agriculture, strolls by and looks at your half-formed mounds. She says something that sounds kind, but her tone feels more like, you should stick to pottery. Or maybe breathing quietly. She grabs your hoe, reshapes your entire row in 5 minutes flat, and walks away. No words. Just judgment and efficiency. Still, you try again. Dig. Stack. Pat. Drop in the corn seeds, carefully saved from last year's harvest and guarded like treasure. Every kernel matters. You place them in threes, bury them gently, and whisper an apology for being late to the party by, oh, about 900 years. You don't get much time to bask in your progress because a shout rises from the main plaza. A group of men and boys is preparing to go out to gather river reeds and clay, and someone gestures at you. You point to yourself with a who, me, face, but yes. You. Time to contribute. You grab a woven satchel and trudge down toward the river, passing other garden plots, some of them already bursting with green. One even has a weird little scarecrow made of feathers, clay, and what looks suspiciously like a raccoon skull. You try not to take it personally when the crows still seem to prefer your plot for lounging. At the riverbank, things get messier. The mud tries to steal your feet with every step. The reeds are sharp, the mosquitoes sharper. You cut what you can and listen to the others talk, mainly about weather patterns, food stores, and whether the moon's strange shape last night meant a warning or just a drunk owl landing badly. Historians still argue whether lunar signs were interpreted as agricultural omens or tied strictly to ceremonial calendars, but you're pretty sure it just means you're doomed either way. You do learn one trick. The clay near the river is valued not just for pottery but also as a sealant for granaries and walls. You watch a boy no older than 8 expertly scoop and shape it with his feet, while you end up elbow deep in goop and possibly insulting the local spirits by flinging some onto a sacred stump. Back at the village, the sun is higher and meaner. Your shirtless neighbors seem immune to sunburn, but your shoulders feel like they've been kissed by a griddle. You ask if there's any sun protection. Someone hands you a paste made from crushed herbs and what you think is crocodile dung. You don't ask too many questions. You just smear it on and try to act like that's perfectly normal behavior. Lunchtime is communal, again. You sit on a log while someone ladles out a porridge that smells like corn, tastes like ash, and has the consistency of a well-wrung sponge. You eat every bite. Not because it's good, but because you need strength, and also because you heard what happens to people who waste food. Spoiler, it involves storytelling circles where your failures are immortalized forever. After lunch, there's a brief rest, which means you get to lie down for 5 whole minutes before someone recruits you to haul firewood. You try to decline, but there's no word for nap in the local vocabulary that doesn't also translate to lazy outsider. So, you haul. The bundle scratches your back, the twine cuts your palms, and the sweat makes your crocodile dung sunscreen run into your eyes. By the time the sun begins its descent, you're limping back toward your sad little field. You glance over and see someone's squash already sprouting. Yours? Still just mounds and misplaced optimism. As you slump onto a stump and try not to cry, a child wanders by, looks at your garden, and says something with a cheeky grin. It sounds innocent enough until someone translates, "He said your field looks like a turtle sat on it and gave up." Thanks, kid. Appreciate the feedback. You stare out at the mounds in the distance. Majestic, silent, ancient. They've seen thousands like you come and go, hopeful, clumsy, sunburned. And now you're one of them. You start to think maybe you'll get the hang of this. Then a soft rumble of thunder echoes across the sky. One cloud. Just one. But it's enough to let you know that tomorrow you may not be battling the soil, but the storm. There's something about a Mississippian morning after rain that makes your joints ache in places you didn't know had joints. The storm arrived in the dead of night, all thunder growls and sheets of lightning that turned your little hut into a shadow puppet show. Now, as you step outside, your breath catches, not because of beauty or awe, but because your field looks like it was visited by an angry god with a mud fetish. The mounds rise stoically in the distance, watching like disapproving grandparents. Meanwhile, your planting mounds? Gone. Flattened. Drowned. Your corn kernels have been generously redistributed by nature into neighboring plots, possibly into the creek, and quite possibly into a nearby duck's breakfast. You squish across the yard and kneel to assess the damage. The soil is saturated, your squash seeds are floating like they're trying to escape, and there's a single, sad bean sprout struggling to stand like a drunk uncle at a wedding. You sigh deeply. You are not a corn farmer. You are a tragic poem in the making. Around you, villagers are already at work, as if the storm were just a casual inconvenience. Roofs are patched, firewood is replaced, and some fields, miraculously, look better after the rain. One elder even nods approvingly at her soggy rows. You're not sure if she's bragging or just naturally blessed by the rain spirits. You try to rebuild a few of your planting mounds, only to realize that the soil is now a stubborn sludge. It clings to your digging stick like guilt. You throw your hands up and lean back, catching sight of the sky. The sun is poking through now, and already the humidity is climbing. You are a human soup dumpling. To make matters worse, you've been assigned an extra chore today, helping a neighboring clan finish their new storage hut. This means hauling split logs, slathering them with a mix of river clay and crushed shells, and trying not to step in anything too alive. It's sticky, hot, and every single task makes you more aware of how soft your hands are. A small girl offers you a scrap of rabbit hide to wrap around a blister. You thank her. She pats your leg and says something that roughly translates to, "At least you're good at bleeding." By noon, you're invited to join a small break beneath the shade of a broadleaf tree. It's cooler here, and someone passes around a shared drink made from fermented persimmons. It's tangy, fizzy, and slightly terrifying. You sip anyway. You've earned it. And maybe, if it makes the next part of your day blurry, that's fine. The conversation under the tree turns to the spirit world. Someone mentions seeing an owl flying low last night. A bad omen. Another counters with a dream about a white deer, which is definitely good. Probably. Historians still argue whether animal omens were standardized across Mississippian cultures or interpreted more locally, but in this village, the general rule seems to be, if the animal does something weird, it means something, and you should probably light some sweetgrass and say a few words. A nearby woman asks if you saw any signs last night. You mention you dreamed about a giant ear of corn chasing you through the woods, and everyone laughs a little too long. You're not sure if it's funny or if dreams of being hunted by food are just historically hilarious. The break ends, and you're sent back to your garden to try again. The sun now feels like it's cooking you slowly, like a sad tamale. You push forward, reshaping the mounds, adding in some fresh ash from the communal fire pit, and spacing your seeds more thoughtfully this time. It's almost meditative, if meditation involved relentless insects and the occasional slipping into muck up to your knee. As the day winds down, someone calls you over to help with dinner preparations. It's a small feast day, something to do with the half moon and the changing season. That means extra food, music, and possibly witnessing a minor ritual or two. You help roast river fish on flat stones, turning them with sticks while someone else sprinkles on crushed wild herbs. You prepare corn cakes by patting maize dough into leaf wraps and placing them near the fire. And you assist with making a stew that involves more ingredients than you could have ever imagined growing. It smells amazing. You feel a flicker of pride, until someone hands you a bowl of raw ingredients and tells you it's your turn to contribute a dish. You make what might be described as ambitious soup. It is tolerated. Barely. As the feast begins, drums start up, soft, rhythmic, calming. Children dance in circles, laughing. The older villagers settle in, watching, eating, telling stories. A few are wearing ceremonial clothes, with feathered sashes and painted faces. One man wears a mask shaped like a bird's beak and performs a slow, circling walk around the fire. The elders say he is invoking a sky spirit, or maybe telling a story about a past drought. The symbolism is fluid. You watch, entranced, until someone nudges you. You're being offered a spot in the circle, a chance to dance. You hesitate, mainly because your legs feel like jelly-filled clubs, but you rise anyway. You try to mimic the movements. It's more waddle than dance, more stumbling than grace, but you're in it. For a moment, you're part of something, swaying to rhythms older than language. You catch glimpses of the moon rising above the mounds, half full and pale. It feels like it's watching, judging, or maybe just amused. Later, as the fire dims and the villagers drift off, someone hands you a small pouch of crushed tobacco and says, "For your field. Tomorrow, offer it to the soil. The spirits might help." You tuck it into your belt and nod. Not because you're sure it will work, but because you're beginning to understand that in this world, belief is as necessary as water. You head back to your hut, sore, stained, and somehow, just a little, hopeful. You haven't been chased by bears, stung by hornets, or recruited into a war party, yet. But it's only been 3 days. Sleep is supposed to heal. That's what they say. But when you wake on your 4th day as a Mississippian corn farmer, you feel more like a broken wagon wheel than a rested human being. Your arms ache from clay hauling, your thighs protest with every bend, and you're fairly certain your ankles mutinied sometime around midnight. Even your eyelids feel heavy, like someone filled them with sand. Still, dawn means duty. You shuffle outside, expecting another round of field maintenance, but instead, you're greeted by something worse, a lesson in pest control. Yes, today, your job is to help defend your fragile little garden from the local wildlife buffet. Turns out, you're not the only one excited about young corn sprouts. Deer, rabbits, birds, especially those smug crows, have all gotten word that there's an open bar of fresh produce in your sad little plot. You're handed a rattle made of turtle shells and a small sling. Make noise. Throw rocks. Scare them, someone says, grinning. It sounds simple, but the crows are smarter than you. One actually waits for you to turn your back before landing and taking a dramatic nibble. You whirl and fling a pebble. It misses by several feet, hits a nearby basket, and elicits laughter from a group of children. You're officially the village entertainment for the morning. You upgrade your scare tactics. You tie bits of woven fiber to sticks and plant them like makeshift scarecrows. You hum, shout, wave your arms. The crows remain unimpressed. One just blinks at you, cocks its head, and poops near your beans. Later that morning, you're invited to a short ceremony meant to bless the plants. You assume it's symbolic, until you're asked to smear a paste of cornmeal, deer fat, and powdered roots along the edge of your plot. You try not to gag. The smell is assertive. One of the elders chants softly, circling the field with a bundle of smoking herbs. She waves the smoke over your mounds, whispering to the seeds to wake up and grow. Historians still argue whether such agricultural rites were seasonal or performed during personal crises, but from the way she glances at your garden, this definitely falls into the personal crisis category. You're also told to sprinkle that tobacco you received last night. With a solemn nod, you take the pouch, walk to your field, and, feeling slightly ridiculous, whisper a few encouraging words as you scatter the offering. It feels silly, but it also feels peaceful, grounding, even. Afterward, you're sent to gather something called green treasure. Sounds fun, right? It's not gold. It's compost ingredients. Dead leaves, rotten logs, animal dung. Yes, poop. You're literally foraging for poop. You wander the edges of the forest with a woven basket, collecting decomposing matter like a very confused raccoon. As you work, you run into another villager, an older man with wild hair and no concept of personal space. He starts telling you about the old earthworks, the mounds that dot the horizon. He says each one is alive, filled with bones, memories, and sometimes angry ancestors. He points to one large mound and says it sings during thunderstorms. You nod solemnly, unsure whether he means metaphorically or literally. He also tells you a raccoon spirit lives behind the mound and once stole his shoes. You file that one under interesting but unverified. You return to your plot with your basket of forest funk and are instructed to mix it into the soil with a wooden paddle. The smell is next level. You're on the verge of discovering a new form of nausea. But you press on, because someone tells you it's good for the squash. And after last night's rainfall, your squash needs all the help it can get. Around midday, the temperature spikes. The humidity wraps around you like a damp wool blanket, and you long for an air conditioner more than you've ever longed for anything. Your skin is sticky, your clothes cling like regret, and you've sweated so much your crocodile dung sunscreen is visibly sliding down your neck. You reapply, hoping the flies buzzing around your face will lose interest. They don't. To cool down, you take a break by the river with a few other younger villagers. Someone starts a splashing match. You get soaked. You laugh. And then, someone tells a story about a boy who once got pulled under by a snapping turtle the size of a canoe. You scramble out of the water with all the grace of a slippery toad. Back in the village, there's talk of a coming trade visit from another group upriver. It's not a full-on diplomatic event, but everyone is preparing baskets of surplus food, shell beads, and stone tools to exchange. You're put in charge of inspecting some trade goods. Translation: you get to sort shiny rocks and try not to mess anything up. One item catches your eye, a pipe carved from stone, shaped like a bird. It's beautiful, delicate. You admire the craft. Then someone casually mentions it was used in past rituals to speak with the ancestors. You immediately set it down, whispering a quiet apology just in case you offended someone dead and easily annoyed. The evening meal is simpler today: cornmeal cakes, roasted squash, and smoked fish. You're beginning to appreciate how every ingredient comes from labor, from sweat, and occasionally from chasing a squirrel away from your beans. You overhear two elders debating something, whether this season's planting came too late. One blames the river's late thaw, the other says it's the alignment of the moon. Historians still argue whether Mississippian agriculture followed a strictly seasonal calendar or was adjusted by astronomical signs. You're starting to see how both might be true, and how you're absolutely not ready to predict anything except your own fatigue. That night, as the firelight flickers against the wall of your hut, you write, scratch, a crude tally stick. Notches for each day you've survived. 4 lines. You consider the 11 still ahead and sigh. You dream again. This time, you're being chased by a rabbit in a ceremonial mask. It's carrying a squash like a club and shouting something in a language you somehow understand: tend your garden or else. You wake sweating, half laughing, half terrified. And you realize something. Tomorrow, the corn either grows, or you get eaten by a very angry rabbit. You rise before the sun, jolted awake by the sound of distant drumming. Not festive drumming, more like a slow, steady pulse that tells your bones this is serious. You step outside and blink at the shadows stretching across the grass. People are gathering at the central plaza, their faces still soft with sleep, their hands already busy. Today is Labor Day, not the relaxing kind with barbecue and paper plates, but the community sort, where everyone has a task, and you are expected to pull your weight or be quietly judged into the next life. You're assigned to help dredge an irrigation trench that feeds the communal maize field, a massive, neatly organized expanse where the real corn grows, not your tragic backyard experiment. This is where the food for ceremonies, storage, and trade comes from. It's sacred ground, in a practical sort of way. You follow an older man named Thalu, whose forearms look like they've been carved from driftwood. He hands you a wide-bladed digging tool and gestures toward the shallow trench where water should be flowing. Instead, it's sluggish, barely more than a muddy trickle. You and 3 others start scraping and scooping, removing thick sludge, plant debris, and one extremely cranky frog. The sun hasn't even cleared the treetops, and you're already dripping sweat. The clay clings to your calves like a desperate toddler. As you work, Thalu starts talking. Not small talk. Not even questions. He just narrates stories about floods, about a summer when the fish turned black and floated to the surface, about a lightning bolt that struck the mound and left a handprint burned into the earth. You want to ask if he's exaggerating, but the man hasn't blinked in 5 minutes, and his delivery is unnervingly sincere. At one point, he casually adds, sometimes the trench spirits get lazy. They like tobacco too. You make a mental note to stock up on spirit bribes. While you're hip-deep in muck, a messenger jogs by shouting news. The traders from the north have arrived early. A ripple of excitement spreads. These aren't enemies, they're allies, kin of a kind, but still, everyone shifts gears. Trade days mean display, diplomacy, and vigilance. Theft is rare, but misunderstanding can snowball into offense, which in turn can snowball into a spear through the leg. You clean up quickly, splash the worst of the trench water off your legs, and get pulled into setting up the trade display near the plaza. Woven mats are unrolled. Beads sorted. Tobacco bundles stacked like offerings. Ceremonial pottery is arranged in careful rows. You help carry a carved idol made of wood and copper, shaped like a bird-headed figure with open hands. You feel nervous holding it, like it might judge your posture. As the visiting group enters the plaza, you catch sight of something unexpected: feathers. Lots of them. Their leader wears a cape of red and blue bird feathers that shimmer in the light like polished gems. His face is marked with black paint in spiraling lines, and he carries a staff topped with a carved sun disk. They don't speak your tongue exactly. It's a dialect, familiar but foreign. But there's enough overlap for the greetings to go smoothly. Hands are clasped, gifts exchanged, and everyone exhales slightly. No spears today. You're told to help carry baskets of smoked fish and corn cakes as an offering. The traders respond with obsidian blades, river pearls, and bundles of dyed thread. One even offers a piece of shiny mica, paper-thin, reflective, and stunning. You want to touch it, but you also want to keep your fingers. There's a pause in the trading while the elders confer. That gives you a few minutes to wander around and inspect what's been brought. You find a small clay whistle shaped like a turtle. When you blow it, the sound is high and warble. A child from the visiting group laughs and offers you a handful of hickory nuts in exchange. You accept. You've made your first trade. Not bad for a barely functional corn farmer. Later, a ceremony begins to mark the occasion. It's not overly dramatic, just a few speeches, some rhythmic drumming, and the offering of smoke to the sky. But then something unusual happens, a game breaks out. Chunky. You've heard the name, but now you see it in action. A round stone disc is rolled across a packed dirt field. 2 players sprint after it, hurling spears at the ground where they think the disc will stop. The closest spear wins. It's graceful, fast, and deceptively brutal. You're roped in as a practice target, not in the dangerous sense, thankfully. Your job is to retrieve the spears. You run back and forth, dodging errant throws, sweating through your tunic, and wondering why you didn't choose to become a Mississippian singer instead. You overhear someone mention that elite players sometimes tattooed their arms with symbols of luck and speed, believing the designs helped guide their spears. Historians still argue whether such tattoos were purely decorative or spiritually charged, but after watching a man land 3 throws within inches of the rolling disc, you lean toward the supernatural. That night, after the traders have set up camp on the edge of the village, there's feasting. Bigger than usual. Boiled venison, roasted roots, and stewed berries. Everyone eats until they lean back and sigh. Even the dogs look full. You're sitting near a group of younger villagers when someone pulls out a flute. The music is soft, breathy, like wind in tall grass. You're handed a drink you don't recognize. It tastes like pine needles and honey. Probably fermented. Probably strong. The traders begin a storytelling session, each person adding to the tale. It's a communal myth-building game, where spirits walk among men and rivers turn to smoke. You laugh. You gasp. You try to join in and somehow end up accidentally describing a corn god with chicken feet. It becomes a running joke. Later, back in your hut, you lie down and feel the day settle into your bones. You've worked, played, traded, and not completely embarrassed yourself. A small victory, but the trench still needs fixing. Your garden is still weak. And tomorrow, you've been invited, well, assigned, to help with the ceremonial mound. 1 week in, and your soft modern soul is cracking like sun-baked clay. The morning sneaks up on you with a chill mist curling through the trees, the kind of damp air that sticks to your skin like spider silk. You wake to the scent of wood smoke and boiling roots, and for a fleeting moment, you forget where, or when, you are. But then your back screams, your knees creak, and a small child darts past your doorway yelling something about the mound spirits being hungry. Right. Mississippian corn farmer. Day 6. You're still alive. Barely. Today, your assignment is a big one. Help maintain one of the ceremonial mounds. You'd hoped it was a misunderstanding. Maybe a joke. You were wrong. The mound in question looms on the village's eastern side, a grassy, perfectly shaped platform rising over 30 feet high, its edges so sharp they look carved by geometry itself. It's not just a pile of dirt, it's the physical embodiment of power, belief, memory, and community status. Historians agree that the Mississippians built these mounds as temples, tombs, and elite residences, though they still argue whether all were religious or some were purely political. Today, the mound gets a makeover, and you're holding a basket of fresh sod, which you're told to layer over worn spots like a leafy toupee. You follow others up a packed earthen ramp, your calves screaming in protest, until you reach the summit. The view stops you cold. From here, the entire settlement unfurls below you like a living map, garden plots crisscrossing the soil, smoke threads rising from conical huts, children chasing chickens, elders moving with steady grace, the river curling in the distance like a silver serpent. For a moment, you forget the itchy sod clinging to your arms. Then you trip over a turtle and land hard on your elbow. The turtle's fine. You're not. 2 nearby workers snort laughter. You mumble something about modern footwear and keep laying sod. Your taskmaster today is a woman named Sati, all cheekbones and authority. She doesn't speak much, just gestures and frowns. She corrects your sod-laying technique by silently taking your basket and redoing your entire row while you try to look useful. At one point, you ask what the mound means. She squints at you and says, "Depends who's buried in it." Then she walks away. You're pretty sure she just made your spine shiver. By mid-morning, a group of younger boys joins the effort, dragging up small bundles of thatch to repair a ceremonial structure at the top. They laugh, shout, and ask you to race them. You foolishly accept. Halfway up the mound ramp, they vanish ahead of you like deer. You reach the top last, panting, and one of them crowns you with a wilted flower. "Corn Farmer King," he declares, and everyone cheers. It's unclear whether they are mocking you or not. You choose to feel honored. Later, while helping dig a drainage channel around the base of the mound, you notice something half-buried, an old stone bead, smoothed by time. You brush it off and show it to a nearby elder. He nods solemnly and whispers, "She dropped it during the first storm." You want to ask who she's, but has already walked off, whistling. You pocket the bead anyway. It feels like it's still warm. Around midday, you break for a shared meal at the base of the mound. Sati passes around a stew that smells like smoke and garlic. You think it might contain squirrel or raccoon. You don't ask. You eat. The conversation turns to mound legends. One man claims the structure was built in a single night by giants. Another insists it hides a copper serpent who whispers answers in dreams. A child chimes in that her grandmother says it's a sky ladder for the dead. You sit quietly, spoon in hand, thinking about how much belief can be packed into a pile of earth. One woman swears she saw lightning strike the mound and rebound into the sky like it had hit a mirror. "The ancestors didn't want it that day," she mutters. You ask what they did want. She replies, "Patience." You are decidedly running low on that. After lunch, you're sent to collect fresh earth from a nearby clay pit to patch the mound's eroding base. This involves hacking at the side of a steep slope with a dull stone blade, trying not to tumble headfirst into a patch of poison ivy. You wonder, not for the first time, how your ancestors survived without chiropractors. While you work, a few villagers nearby are making something unusual, a large ceremonial costume. You sneak a peek. It involves feathers, shells, and a full deerskin mask with painted eyes. You're told it's for the Green Corn Renewal, a festival still a few days away. The mask wearer represents a spirit who purifies the community's sins. You immediately decide to behave for the rest of the week. As dusk rolls in, the last task is spreading crushed shell over a sacred path leading up to the mound. It crunches underfoot with every step, the sound strangely satisfying. You help arrange some newly crafted pottery at the base, offerings, possibly warnings. It's hard to tell. Everything here walks a line between beauty and seriousness. When it's over, Sati finally speaks more than 3 words to you. "You did okay," she says, then adds, "You walk like a squirrel, though." You blink. "A fast squirrel?" "No," she replies. "A tired one." You take it as a compliment. That night, the community gathers at the mound base for singing. No ceremony, no ritual, just voices rising into the purple twilight. Some melodies are soft and winding, others rhythmic and sharp. You hum along. A child presses a reed flute into your hand. You try it. You fail spectacularly. More laughter. Still, there's warmth in it. You've never felt so exhausted and somehow so tethered, to earth, to sky, to these people you barely understand but already miss in advance. Back in your hut, you lie down with your muscles aflame and your feet refusing to acknowledge their existence. You stare at the ceiling, the stone beads still in your palm. You dream of standing atop the mound again, but this time it's snowing, and you're alone. Below you, the village is gone. In its place, corn stalks as tall as mountains, swaying in a wind that sounds like chanting. You wake with a start. There are still 9 days left. And tomorrow, they say you'll be learning how to preserve food for winter. You'd kill for a refrigerator. Unfortunately, you'll be making jerky. You begin the next day with a grim realization. If you're going to survive even half this moon cycle, you'll need to understand how to keep food from rotting into a sour, maggot-laced mess. Because surprise, there's no fridge. No vacuum sealer. Not even a cool cellar. There's just salt, smoke, sun, and prayer. And today, you're learning how to make jerky the old-fashioned way. Your instructor is a man named Wayo. He smells like firewood and sage and looks like he hasn't smiled since the last solstice. Wayo doesn't believe in shortcuts, in talking more than necessary, or in handling meat gently. He gestures to a pile of venison that was hunted at dawn, fresh, glistening, and still warm enough to make your stomach churn. You slice, he says flatly, handing you a blade of sharpened stone. With the grain. Thin. You nod like you understand what "with the grain" means. You absolutely do not. You make your first cut. It's jagged, clumsy, and far too thick. Wayo says nothing. He just stares at your handiwork, then calmly slices a piece of his own that looks like it came from a restaurant in modern Portland. You keep trying. Your fourth piece is passable. Wayo grunts. You pretend it's a compliment. As you work, flies begin to gather. Not just a few. A swarm. One woman nearby rubs crushed mint leaves into her arms and face like perfume, explaining it keeps the bugs away. You try it. You now smell like a lamb roast, but it works. The strips are then laid over a rack made of split willow branches. Beneath it, a low, smoky fire smolders, not hot enough to cook, but just warm enough to dry. The smoke smells amazing, a mix of hickory and dried sweetgrass. You start to get hungry again, despite the fact that your arms are coated in blood and you've just scraped a deer's tendon off your thumb. Nearby, others are preserving squash in a method that seems deceptively simple, slicing it thin, threading it on wooden skewers, and hanging it near the fire to dry. It's like ancient fruit leather. A woman offers you a piece. It's sweet, chewy, and faintly nutty. Not bad, considering there's a good chance a beetle landed on it 5 minutes ago. You learn that dried food isn't just a matter of convenience. It's survival. The Mississippians face lean months in winter and again in early spring, when stored food becomes the only thing between the village and real hunger. The community works together to ensure that everyone has something. Selfishness is frowned upon, hoarding is punished subtly but firmly, and sharing is a cultural reflex. It's around this time you overhear a debate between two elders about whether the best preservation method is smoke or sun. One insists the smoke carries protective energy, keeping bad spirits away. The other argues that sun-drying preserves the life-light of the food. Historians still argue whether these ideas were metaphorical or deeply spiritual, but here, both men act like they're talking chemistry. You just nod and eat another slice of squash. Later in the day, you're pulled into a different preservation effort, rendering bear fat. The smell is, let's say, unforgettable. The process involves simmering chunks of fat until it liquefies, skimming impurities, then pouring the result into clay jars lined with ash to keep bugs out. This fat will be used for cooking, oiling tools, and making ointments. You're told it can also be mixed with ground herbs and charcoal to make war paint, which you mentally file away under cool, possibly horrifying uses. In one corner, a group of teenagers is fermenting corn into a thick, tangy drink. It smells like sourdough bread's rebellious cousin. You're offered a sip. It burns your throat, clears your sinuses, and makes your ears feel like they've been inflated. You pretend to enjoy it. They cheer. You're in. Even the kids help preserve food. Some string up beans, others mash nuts into a thick paste that will be dried and stored. You're amazed by how communal the process is. In your world, food prep is often solitary or transactional. Here, it's rhythmic, social, almost meditative. At one point, an older woman hands you a pouch of dried fish wrapped in bark. She says it's for later, when your shadow gets thin. You don't quite understand, but it feels like a kind of quiet protection. You stow it carefully, like a relic. As the sun begins to dip, the smoke thickens and turns golden. The air smells like feast and fire, and your skin feels cured in salt and wood. You're sore, hungry, and utterly exhausted, but you also feel useful. Not just tolerated, but needed. You sit beside Wayo as the fire dies down. He finally speaks again, staring at the coals. Some people think we store food for winter, he says. But really, we store it for memory. You eat something in February and remember August. It keeps your spirit from curling in on itself. You blink. That might be the most poetic thing anyone's ever said while elbow deep in deer. Then he adds, also, if you don't store food, you die. Ah, there it is. That night, you crawl into your hut, your clothes soaked with smoke and your dreams full of drying racks and whispering fires. You realize you haven't craved modern food in days. No pizza. No cereal. Not even chocolate. Your body, rewired by sweat and work and ancient flavors, has recalibrated its desires. Still, you wouldn't say no to a granola bar. As you drift off, a breeze rattles the dried squash hanging by your door. It sounds like chimes. You think about Wayo's words, how food stores memory, how winter is a kind of forgetting, and how this place, strange and hard as it is slowly making space in your head for things you never expected to care about. You've survived another day. Just barely. But tomorrow? Tomorrow is fish trap day. And you have never caught a fish in your life. You wake to the unmistakable sound of splashing and laughter, which, in this world, can only mean one thing. Someone is either bathing, fishing, or falling in while doing one of the two. Today, you learn the art of fishing, not with rods or reels, but with traps, weirs, and baskets designed with a brilliance that makes your fancy outdoor gear look like child's play. The river's waiting, cool and wide, coiling past the edge of the village like a lazy silver snake. You're not ready, but you never are. A boy named Enli is your guide. He's maybe 11 years old and already more skilled in rivercraft than you'll be in your entire adult life. He hands you a fish trap made of tightly woven reeds, shaped like a funnel. Put it downstream. Pointy end in. Wait. You squint. That's it. Enli nods. Fish are not smart. You can't argue with that. You wade in knee-deep, placing the trap against the current as Enli whistles tunelessly nearby. The river tugs at your calves with surprising strength, and each submerged step feels like crossing a moving floor. Your trap promptly flips sideways. Enli sighs, wades in, and fixes it. Maybe don't touch anything, he says gently. That stings more than the leech you just discovered on your ankle. Other villagers work the water too, placing fish weirs, stone or wooden barriers that funnel fish into specific areas. From above, they look like puzzle pieces etched into the current. It's a technique found across the Mississippian world, and even today archaeologists still argue whether some of these patterns were symbolic or purely functional. Either way, they work. You help carry some extra river stones to reinforce one weir. Each one is slick and heavy, your back creaking with every haul. But slowly, you begin to see the structure form, a narrow opening pointing downstream, where fish will follow the current, right into a waiting trap or spear. And yes, you get to try spearing. You're handed a sharpened stick. You crouch, poised above a shallow bend where shadows dart like whispers. You strike. Nothing. You strike again. Still nothing. By the 10th attempt, you've only stabbed your own foot with splash water. Then Enli taps your shoulder and silently points. You look down. A fat, glimmering catfish glides right between your legs. You scream. Enli falls over laughing. Eventually, you catch a fish. Not with the spear. Not with skill. Just dumb luck. You lift the trap you'd set hours ago and, surprise, it holds one wriggling, confused river creature. Enli claps. The others cheer. You bask in your moment of triumph, wet, muddy, and absolutely ridiculous. The fish is added to a communal basket, joining dozens more. These will be smoked, dried, or stewed. Some are even saved for fish oil, used in lamps and medicines. One elder tells you the oil can also soothe aching joints. You volunteer your knees immediately. You spend part of the afternoon weaving more traps. It's a meditative process, looping reeds over one another, spiraling from wide mouth to narrow tail. The design is ancient and ingenious. And yes, modern historians have confirmed some traps used by Mississippian people were so efficient, they bordered on passive harvesting. You begin to appreciate how sustainable and clever this system really is. As the sun rises higher, you're invited into a canoe, a dugout carved from a single log. It's wide, heavy, and shockingly stable. You paddle downstream with two others, passing riverbanks alive with birdsong and dragonflies. One man gestures to a fallen tree where turtles sun themselves. Old shell spirits, he murmurs. On the far side of the bend, you see something peculiar, stakes in the river arranged in a spiral. Your companions explain it's an experimental trap design passed down from a neighboring village. Sometimes the water teaches us, they say, as if rivers are professors in flowing robes. You believe it. By late afternoon, the fish are cleaned and strung up for drying. It's gory work, but efficient. You help gut one and learn the trick of using a bone sliver to remove the spine cleanly. You're getting the hang of it. Sort of. Someone offers you a piece of smoked fish from last season. It's chewy, smoky, and intensely salty. Not half bad. You've had worse from gas stations. During a break, you talk with an elder named Ayuka, who speaks slowly, like each word has to wade through memory before surfacing. She tells you about a time the river flooded early and washed away their entire year's fish stores. We blamed the moon, she says, smiling faintly. Then built better traps. You ask if the river ever gives warnings. She nods. If the frogs go quiet. Noted. You mentally resolve to keep a keen ear on frog behavior. That evening, you're invited to help cook a fish stew. It's made with chunks of catfish, squash, herbs you can't name, and a tangy paste made from fermented persimmons. The scent is thick and comforting. You stir the pot with a wooden ladle longer than your arm. As you all eat under the darkening sky, fireflies blink along the river's edge. Someone brings out a turtle shell drum. A rhythm starts. Not a ceremony, just shared music. Feet tap, heads nod. You catch yourself humming. You think about rivers back home. Bridges. Motors. Plastic bottles bobbing in the current. Here, the water is sacred. Alive. A partner, not just a resource. Someone jokes that you should stay through the next moon and build a giant fish trap from your homeland. You laugh and say, we just use nets and hope for the best. They nod politely, clearly unimpressed. Before bed, You check the fish you helped hang to dry. You touch one, light, leathery, perfect. You've made food that will last weeks, maybe longer. Your stomach feels full. Your spirit, oddly, too. Then, just as you settle into your sleeping mat, you hear a splash. And someone shout, "Bear!" You leap up. Tomorrow, they say, you'll learn about Mississippian medicine. You might need it sooner than that. Not in a fun, let's stay fit kind of way, but in a there is a large, hairy, probably very angry animal somewhere in the dark sort of way. Last night's bear scare wasn't just real, it was a whole event. You didn't see it exactly, but you heard it, and that's enough. The crashing through the underbrush. The panicked whoop of someone on lookout. The unmistakable low growl of something that definitely didn't come from a squirrel. You survived. Barely. Thanks in part to a very fast runner who hauled you bodily out of your panic spiral and into a shelter made of woven reeds and bark. You huddled there until the noises faded, heart jackhammering against your ribs like it was trying to tunnel out. This morning, you wake up sore, jumpy, and with a sizable thorn lodged in your foot from last night's sprint. Which brings us to today's focus, medicine. And friend, you're going to need it. Your thorned foot earns you a visit to an older healer named Issa. She doesn't walk so much as glide across the ground, wrapped in robes the color of tree bark and soot. Her face is lined like river stone, but her eyes? Sharp as obsidian. She examines your foot with a squint and a grunt. Then she reaches for a bundle of dried plants hanging from the rafters of her hut. Black sage and rabbit tobacco, she murmurs. For swelling. You're lucky it's not worse. Bears are bad for circulation. She's joking. Probably. She crushes the herbs between two stones and mixes them with water until a bitter paste forms. It smells like scorched hay and minty feet. She applies it to your wound, wraps it with a strip of soft bark, and tells you to stay off it for 2 days. 2 days? You nearly laugh. You're in a village where even children wake up hauling wood and grinding corn before the sun rises. There's no PTO here. Issa seems to read your thoughts. If you want the wound to rot, feel free. I'll save you a burial mat. You sit down. Immediately. Over the next few hours, you begin to understand the complexity of Mississippian medicine. It's not just rub some dirt on it. It's a full system, botanical, spiritual, physical. Issa teaches you how to identify healing plants like yarrow, wild ginger, and dogwood bark. You even help her gather goldenrod and echinacea near the edge of the forest, where she murmurs soft words of thanks to each plant before harvesting. Always pay respect, she tells you, tapping your forehead gently. The plant remembers. You're not sure if it's metaphorical or literal. Honestly, you're afraid to ask. She shows you how to dry leaves on woven mats, how to powder roots using smoothed river stones, and how to brew bark teas that act as painkillers. One tea knocks you out so effectively you accidentally nap through part of a rainstorm. You wake up under a leaf mat, completely dry, with someone having placed a small cup of corn mush beside you. Hospital service, Mississippian style. There's also an ointment made from bear fat, beeswax, and crushed spruce needles. It smells woodsy, earthy, like the inside of an old cedar chest. It's used for muscle pain, and after a generous slathering, your thorn foot starts to feel halfway functional again. You ask Issa if she treats everyone in the village. She nods. And those beyond. They come from other places. When they hear, you realize she's kind of a big deal, a traveling medicine woman, respected even in far-off towns. Later, you learn she trained under a healer who was said to cure snakebite with just breath and bone ash. Historians still argue whether such feats were actual medicine or ceremonial metaphor, but when Issa breathes over your leg and the pain subsides, you stop questioning. She takes you deeper into the spiritual side of healing. At one point, she smudges your arms and chest with burning juniper, fanning the smoke with the turkey feather. Bad spirit sickness clings to fear, she says. Smoke clears it. You inhale. Cough. Then cough some more. She pats your back. Nearby, another healer works with a boy who's had a fever for 2 days. They've hung copper charms over his sleeping mat, based on the belief that copper carries cleansing power. Archaeologists have found similar copper artifacts at Mississippian sites, though they debate whether they were decorative or medicinal. Here, it's both. You start to notice how interconnected everything is: medicine, spirituality, nature, even social structure. There are no pills, no sterile white rooms. But there's a deep, respectful understanding of the human body and the world it moves through. And it works. But medicine isn't all roots and rituals. You also see the more gruesome side. A hunter returns with a nasty gash on his thigh. Issa takes it calmly, stitching the wound with thread made of sinew and using a needle carved from bone. You nearly pass out watching it. He barely flinches. Later, she lets you help make a poultice for a woman with aching hands. You mash wild onions and mullein leaves into a slimy, warm paste that smells terrible and apparently feels amazing. The woman smiles and calls you her little helper. You beam with pride, like you didn't just forget how to pronounce mullein 5 minutes ago. And then comes the ceremony. Not for you, thankfully, but for an elder who has been suffering from what Issa calls spirit heaviness. It involves music, dancing, chanting, and herbs that are burned in a fire circle. You're invited to observe, to sit at the edge and just feel. The rhythm of the drums settles into your bones. The air is thick with cedar smoke and singing. It's not just healing. It's cleansing. By the time the fire dies down, the elder is weeping softly, held by her kin. Her eyes are brighter. Her shoulders looser. You don't know what changed, but something did. That night, as you lie on your mat, leg wrapped in Issa's miracle bark, you realize something. You've learned more about human care in 1 day here than in years surrounded by urgent cares and pharmacies. There's a reason these people survive floods, famines, even bears. They take care of each other. You drift off to sleep with the scent of wild ginger still on your fingers, your breath slow and steady. Tomorrow, they say, you'll help with construction. You're not even sure you've healed from fishing yet. Morning breaks with the sharp smell of wood smoke and the dull thump-thump-thump of someone hammering something far too close to your sleeping spot. You open one eye to find a boy about 10 years old cheerfully pounding a wooden mallet into a post as tall as he is. He grins at you like it's just another relaxing day. And for him, it is. Today, you're building. Or at least trying to. Mississippian construction isn't just piles of sticks and wishful thinking. It's engineering, resource management, and backbreaking labor, all bundled together with a surprisingly refined aesthetic. Today, you're helping raise a new house for one of the families expanding their part of the village. You're handed a digging stick and told to start making holes. The ground is already marked out in a rough oval. Mississippian homes are often circular or rectangular with rounded corners, which historians think help them withstand wind and rain better. Start here, says an elder named Toma, who's directing the build like a foreman crossed with a motivational speaker. Make hole. Deep hole. No sideways hole. You immediately make a sideways hole. Toma sighs. A teenager takes your place with gentle pity, and you're reassigned to gathering saplings. You trudge into the woods with a few others, learning how to identify young trees that bend but don't break, perfect for framing walls and ceilings. Your hands blister within 20 minutes. On the walk back, a woman named Soku tells you about how their lodges are designed to breathe in summer and insulate in winter. We pack clay between sticks, she says, miming the smearing motion. Like muscles on a skeleton. She hands you a sapling and tells you not to drag it. The earth gave it. You carry it right. At the build site, the frame is already taking shape. Upright poles form the structure's skeleton. Horizontal beams are lashed across with cord made from inner tree bark, twisted until it's stronger than half the stuff at your local hardware store. No nails. No metal. Just wood, sinew, and skill. You're assigned to daubing duty. This sounds fun, until you realize it's essentially smearing a blend of clay, moss, straw, and water between every pair of wall slats. The mixture is cold, squishy, and smells faintly of swamp. It's also heavy. You slap it onto the frame like frosting a cake, except the cake is 12 feet long and made of sticks. Some of your daub immediately falls off. The rest ends up on your tunic. Toma walks past and nods approvingly. Good. You're dirty. That means it's working. As you labor under the sun, the construction site hums with rhythm. Everyone has a task. Small children ferry bundles of straw, giggling like it's a game. Older women shape the roof's curves using a lattice of saplings bent into arcs. Roofs like these are often thatched with river grass or bark shingles, depending on availability and season. Right now, you're collecting river grass. You wade waist-deep into a reed bed, slicing stalks with a chipped stone blade. A nearby man tells you that this grass has to be dried before thatching or it molds. Last year, he says, someone rushed it. House smelled like old turtles. Duly noted. You help haul bundles of reeds back and lay them in the sun to dry. The sheer amount of coordination is staggering. No blueprints. No spreadsheets. Just memory, oral instruction, and inherited knowledge passed down like heirlooms. Historians still argue whether some Mississippian building styles were standardized by trade networks or evolved independently in each region. Either way, the results are impressively uniform. And then there's the mound. Not all Mississippian villages have one, but this one does. You've seen it rising in the center of the village like a broad, earthen platform. Today, you're allowed to climb it, carefully. The mound is sacred. Built layer by layer, basket by basket, sometimes over generations. It's used for rituals, council meetings, and as a physical symbol of power. As you ascend, you imagine the labor involved. Thousands of woven baskets filled with soil, sand, and ash. All carried by hand. Archaeological estimates suggest some mounds took decades, even centuries, to complete. One theory says the construction itself was the ritual, that building it united the people and reinforced spiritual purpose. You believe it. Your arms are sore from just one afternoon of hauling reeds. From the top, the view is staggering. The river snakes through the trees like a silver trail. Smoke from cook fires rises in lazy spirals. The village pulses with movement. It feels alive in a way cities never do. Interwoven, intentional. Back on the ground, you help lay down the flooring for the house using packed clay mixed with crushed shells. Yes, shells. The calcium strengthens the floor and resists cracking. This isn't just a dirt floor, it's science. Someone carves simple animal symbols into the doorway frame. 4 blessings, they explain. A fox, a turtle, a long-legged bird that might be a crane, or a goose having a bad day. You're told every home has its own symbols. Its own spirit signature. The roof is the final step. You help lash bundles of dry grass into thick layers over the curved skeleton. The result looks surprisingly aerodynamic, like it could survive both wind and time. You're not an architect, but this feels like one of the most structurally sound buildings you've ever been near. Then, at sunset, the family performs a quiet blessing. They sprinkle cornmeal at each corner and speak words you don't fully understand. It's not loud, not grand, just grounded. You sit on a nearby log, watching the fireflies gather as the last light fades from the thatch. A child plays with a twig horse carved from driftwood. Someone starts a slow drumbeat. The new home glows softly in the firelight, warm and welcoming. You think about your own place. The insulation that never quite works. The weird smell in the hallway you never traced. The sense that your walls don't remember you. This one will. But just as you let yourself slip into something like peace, someone taps your shoulder. Tomorrow's the corn dance, they say. You'll be helping cook. You groan. They laugh. You'll be lucky if you don't fall into a fire pit. You wake up to laughter, music, and the smell of something charred, but in a good way. Today is the corn dance, and if yesterday was about building walls, today is about building culture. The corn dance isn't just a festival, it's a spiritual, communal, and agricultural event wrapped into one big, rhythm-filled, smoke-wreathed package. It marks the heart of the planting and growing season, when corn is no longer just a seedling but has taken hold in the earth. A sort of hopeful checkpoint, like saying, hey, maybe we won't starve this year after all. You are absolutely, definitely helping cook. Not that anyone asked if you wanted to. They give you a wooden paddle and set you in front of a fire pit where a flat stone griddle is heating up. The task? Roast fresh green corn for the feast. Easy, right? Just don't burn anything. You immediately burn something. It turns out, managing fire in an open pit while wearing breezy bark cloth robes is harder than it looks. The corn kernels pop like angry beetles and one even lands in your sandal. A girl no older than 7 comes over, gently moves your hand off the paddle, and shows you the real way. She flips the cobs with a twist of the wrist, never once losing rhythm with the drumbeat that's now echoing from the plaza. Everywhere you turn, people are in motion. Men and women are mixing corn flour into thick dough for flat cakes, called piki or something similar. Others are stirring giant clay pots of bean stew, using carved wooden ladles that look like they belong in an upscale rustic kitchenware ad. The smell? Unbelievable. Earthy, nutty, slightly sweet. Corn is everywhere, in cakes, in gruel, in ash-roasted cobs, in ceremonial drink. You even told it's used in face paint during some rituals, burned to ash, mixed with grease. Versatile doesn't even begin to describe it. Corn was life here. And still is. Historians universally agree that Mississippians centered their society on maize agriculture, but they still debate just how far trade and hybridization influenced the corn varieties across regions. You look at your third roasted cob of the morning and think, who cares? It's delicious. Then comes the dancing. It begins slowly, with a single singer whose voice floats above the crowd like a hawk on thermals. Then the drums begin, soft and steady. Feet shuffle. Anklets made of dried corn husks rustle in time. Soon, there's a spiral forming, men and women, young and old, twirling in counterclockwise rhythm around the plaza. You're invited to join, of course. You try. You really do. At first, you shuffle in place like you're waiting for the microwave to finish. But then the rhythm grabs you. The drums echo in your chest. You let your shoulders relax, your hips loosen. You mimic the sway of the dancers ahead of you. There's no pressure, no perfection needed. Only presence. Your feet move in time. You forget about your sore hands, your thorned foot, your sunburned nose. You dance. Really dance. Then you trip over a chicken. You go down spectacularly, arms flailing, dust flying. People pause for half a second, and then the entire plaza erupts in laughter. Even the elder drummers chuckle as they keep the rhythm going. The chicken, perfectly unharmed, gives you a withering look and struts away. Someone helps you up. Chicken thinks it's the corn god, they joke. Honestly, you believe it. As the sun climbs, you help carry woven baskets of food to a low, bark-covered table. Everyone gathers. Children sit cross-legged. Elders perch on smooth logs. The meal is eaten slowly, with shared hands and shared stories. You're given a piece of smoked fish with corn cake and spicy squash. It tastes like survival, with a hint of nutmeg. A man next to you leans over and murmurs that they always leave a portion of food at the edge of the field. For the spirits, he says. So they know we remember. You nod, trying to act like this is a thing you totally do at home. You definitely don't just microwave taquitos and fall asleep with the plate still on your lap. Later, a group gathers near the mound to reenact a myth, something about a woman who fed her children with corn grown from her own body. It's part theater, part ceremony, and part history lesson, performed with feathered headdresses, hand drums, and animated gestures. You don't understand every word, but the emotion is clear. Reverence, humor, pride, and the kids are into it. They sit wide-eyed, watching the sunlit figures move like living legends. You overhear one elder mention that corn was considered a living being, the corn mother. Some believed it had to be sung to, danced for, even protected from impure thoughts. A little intense, maybe, but when you rely on a single crop for your survival, reverence starts to make a lot of sense. You're pulled aside by Soku, who gives you a necklace made from dyed corn kernels and bone beads. You're still a terrible cook, she says with a grin, but you helped. You wear it like a medal. As dusk falls, the plaza transforms again. Torches are lit. Songs turn from energetic to haunting. One woman sings a lullaby to the corn, thanking it for feeding them, asking it to return next season. The younger dancers imitate stalks swaying in the wind. The elders close their eyes and hum low. The fire crackles. The stars emerge. You lie on your back, staring at the constellations above, the same ones that guided these people season after season. Someone points out a cluster of stars known as the Sky Canoe. It looks like a lopsided boat to you, but you nod anyway. Others say it's a panther. Historians still argue about whether Mississippians used star maps in farming cycles, or just storytelling. But tonight, it feels like both. You're tired in a deep, good way. Your body aches, but your heart is light. There's something ancient and immediate about the corn dance, like tapping into a rhythm that's always been there, just under the soil. Before you fall asleep, someone wraps a woven blanket around you. You danced well, they whisper. You smile, eyes fluttering shut. They don't mention the chicken. The morning after the corn dance arrives like a hangover from a really good dream, except your calves feel like they've been attacked by feral raccoons, and there's still a corn kernel stuck to your cheek. You peel yourself off your woven mat, joints creaking, and shuffle out into the village plaza where the celebration leftovers are being tidied up by people with far more energy than you. But there's no sleeping in when you're a Mississippian corn farmer. Because while you were dancing your heart out under the stars, something more insidious was creeping into your world. Pests. No, not the kind with drumsticks or bad dance moves. The real kind. the kind with 6 legs and an appetite for corn. Today, you're on pest patrol. You quickly learn that Mississippians didn't have pesticides, obviously, and scarecrows weren't really their thing either. Instead, pest control was a job for everyone. And unfortunately, that includes you. Your first task: walk the fields and check the stalks. Each row, each plant. Yes, manually. It turns out that worms love corn. Specifically, the corn earworm. Though no one here calls it that, they definitely know what it is. You spot a fat one munching happily through a tender cob. You're handed a small stick and told to flick it hard. You do, and the worm flies off, possibly to start a new life somewhere more private. A small victory. As you move row by row, other enemies make their presence known. Grasshoppers the size of chicken nuggets. Beetles with iridescent shells that make you feel a little guilty for smashing them. And stink bugs. Oh yes, they earn their name. A group of kids walk by singing a song that sounds suspiciously like a roast battle between humans and bugs. Little cornworm, squishy and fat, try to eat our harvest, we'll squish you flat. Catchy. You ask how they deal with large infestations. One man, with a sun-scorched face and a dry wit, tells you they rotate plots, burn infested patches, and sometimes even dig moats. Fire works best, he says casually, but then you lose the corn and the bugs. Classic Mississippian dilemma: save the crops or save the soil. You also learn that tobacco plants, grown on the edge of the fields, serve a double purpose. Not just for ceremonial smoking or spiritual rituals, but also as natural bug repellents. It's true, some insects avoid areas heavy with tobacco. You're handed a smoldering wad and told to wave it around your row. You promptly cough like you're in a jazz club with no ventilation. And then there's the birds. Birds love corn. Crows, in particular, seem to have a sixth sense for when a fresh crop is just ripe enough to destroy. You wave your arms like a lunatic to scare off a small flock, only to have them return the second your back is turned. Try talking to them, an elder jokes. They're very polite if you ask nicely. You're about to respond when a boy walks up behind you and lets out the most realistic hawk screech you've ever heard. The crows scatter. He smirks and keeps walking like he didn't just terrify every living thing in a 2-mile radius. Historians still argue whether Mississippian cultures actively domesticated any birds for this purpose or simply mimicked natural predators to manage pests. Some suggest they may have even trained dogs to help scare animals away from fields. Today, though, it's just you, your stick, and a growing suspicion that the bugs are unionizing. To make things worse, some of the corn stalks are showing signs of blight. You notice discolored leaves, wilting tips, and strange powdery residue on the husks. It's likely a fungal infection, perhaps smut, a common corn disease. The locals handle this by removing infected plants entirely, tossing them into separate pits far from the healthy crops. No second chances. What's wild? That same fungus, corn smut, is now considered a delicacy in modern Mexican cuisine, called huitlacoche. You wonder if the Mississippians ever ate it too. Soccer says no, making a face like you just suggested eating your own shoes. But who knows? Historians still debate that one. You spend hours under the sun, hands blackened by ash and dirt, kneeling between rows of green towers, swatting bugs and inspecting cobs. At some point, your shirt becomes more pest repellent via sheer odor than anything scientific. But it's not all doom and gloom. You witness something remarkable, an old man carefully planting squash around the base of a corn stalk. It's part of the Three Sisters system: corn, beans, and squash planted together in a beautifully cooperative triangle. The corn provides structure for the beans to climb. The beans fix nitrogen in the soil. The squash shades the ground to keep weeds and moisture in check. You're told this technique is not only efficient, it's spiritual. A reflection of harmony, balance, and respect for the land. Every element supports the other. No pesticides, no chemicals, just symbiosis. You crouch down and try planting a few yourself. It's like composing a living song with roots instead of notes. That afternoon, a group from a neighboring village arrives with trade goods. Among them, clay jars filled with a foul-smelling brew made from fermented plant mash. It's supposedly great for deterring beetles. You sniff one and nearly pass out. Put it near the plants, they explain, not on the plants. Duly noted. You help bury a few of the jars along the field perimeter, hoping the scent wafts just enough to send pests packing. You're skeptical, but these folks have been farming this land longer than your whole ancestry has owned microwaves. By evening, your body feels like it's been chewed on by beetles yourself. You drag yourself to the river, collapse into the water, and let the cool current wash away the stink of ash, tobacco, and bug guts. And just as you're drifting into a peaceful river daze, you feel something nibble your toe. Leeches. Of course. You stagger out like a soggy horror movie extra and make your way back to camp, only to find someone has saved you a plate of charred corn, stewed beans, and, oh no, roasted grasshoppers. They grin. You earned it, they say. You take a cautious bite. Surprisingly crunchy. Kinda nutty. Not bad. You're still not surviving a whole moon cycle, but you are slightly less useless than you were yesterday. Progress. You start your morning with a pop quiz you didn't ask for. What do you do when your entire irrigation trench smells like death and your crops start turning yellow? Spoiler, you panic. The village fields stretch like a green blanket over the gently rolling earth, but today something's off. Your patch of corn, which had been holding on valiantly through bugs, chickens, and your questionable farming, is now drooping like a teenager being asked to do chores. It begins with the telltale signs: brittle leaves, pale stalks, dry soil despite last night's rain. Then comes the real clue, an acrid stink wafting from the canal that snakes past your field. You follow it upstream and nearly fall in when you see the blockage: a lump of rotting fish, tangled reeds, and what might once have been a possum. You're not a water engineer, but you're pretty sure dead possum runoff isn't great for corn. Here's the kicker: you helped dig that canal your first week here. Remember that cheerful, sweaty effort to move water from the river into the fields? Well, welcome to the flip side. The Mississippians had no pumps or valves, just gravity, clever slopes, and constant vigilance. And you, my friend, were not vigilant. Now it's time to get dirty. Again. You grab a digging stick, a basket, and the closest semi-willing teenager, and start scooping the gunk out of the trench. It's foul. The smell clings to your skin. Your sandals are now organic sponges of horror. And still, you dig, because if the water stops flowing, the corn dies. And if the corn dies, well, you don't really want to find out what happens next. Irrigation here wasn't just smart, it was sacred. Water, like corn, was a gift that had to be earned. In some Mississippian beliefs, streams and rivers were the veins of the earth, connecting worlds above and below. You're told not to curse near the water, not to throw trash into it, and definitely not to bathe while angry. Something about waking the river spirits in a bad mood. You don't ask questions. Historians still debate the scale of Mississippian water systems. Some think they were primitive, others say they were surprisingly advanced for pre-contact America. What isn't up for debate? That you're about to have the grossest bath of your life. Once the trench is cleared, fresh water trickles in like a sigh of relief. You sit back on your heels, sweaty and covered in filth, and feel an actual breeze for the first time in hours. The plants haven't perked up yet, but it feels like you're on the right track. Until your hut catches fire. Okay, catches fire is dramatic, but the thatched roof is smoldering a little. Turns out, someone knocked over a fire basin during breakfast, and embers drifted straight into your bedding. You race back, flailing a wet tunic over your head like a demented stork, and stomp out the smoke before it becomes a proper blaze. It's fine. Totally fine. You only lose a corner of your blanket and about 10% of your dignity. You sit down, panting, while Soku arrives with a look that screams, "You again." She tosses you a wet rag and mutters, "Maybe sleep in the non-flammable corner tonight." You nod and wring out the rag, thinking maybe you should just permanently live in the river. But today isn't done with you. Late afternoon brings another challenge, soil sickness. No, it's not a fungus, it's exhaustion. From the dirt itself. See, Mississippians rotated their crops, but only when they had space. Overuse of a field could deplete the nutrients, especially if the Three Sisters system wasn't implemented correctly. That same miraculous corn-bean squash combo? It's only magic if you maintain balance. And with your rookie errors, planting too close, overwatering, forgetting which seeds go where, you've accidentally created a dead zone. An elder spots you staring at your wilted patch and walks over. "You feed the earth?" she asks. You shrug. You thought you had. You threw some fish bits in, some ashes. Was that not enough? She nods slowly and points to a nearby compost pile, rich, black, steaming. Real soil food. Leftover husks, bones, charcoal, even human waste, carefully aged. You gag a little. She grins. This feeds the corn. The corn feeds you. You get it now. Sort of. Not enough to eat mystery compost stew, but enough to know your patch needs help. She shows you how to fold charcoal into the dirt, a form of terra preta, or dark earth, which some archaeologists believe was used by various indigenous cultures to revive exhausted fields. It's gritty, black, and kind of beautiful in its own way. Like a second chance, buried right under your toes. You spend the rest of the day mixing soil, replanting squash in the gaps, and whispering tiny apologies to the stalks you've mistreated. A small offering, a pinch of cornmeal, is sprinkled at the base of one. So they don't resent you, Sokka says, totally straight-faced. You don't laugh. Not anymore. As dusk falls, you join the others at the edge of the mound, where they burn sweetgrass in a shallow clay bowl. The smoke is calming, floral, cleansing. One man mumbles a prayer. Another tells a joke about a deer who thought it could farm better than humans. You don't understand the punchline, but you laugh anyway. Soku hands you a bowl of food, something spicy and nutty, wrapped in a leaf. You eat without asking what it is. By now, you've learned to just trust the process. Later, lying in the dirt outside your slightly singed hut, you reflect on the day's disasters. The trench. The bugs. The soil. The fire. The smell. But also, the laughter. The lessons. The people who helped without hesitation. You close your eyes. Maybe, just maybe, you're starting to get it. Not how to survive. That's still debatable. But how to live here. You wake up to singing. Not the gentle hum of morning birds or the soft rustle of river reeds. No, this is full volume, pre-dawn choral intensity. Someone is belting out a tune that sounds like a mix between a lullaby and a call to arms. You peek out from your not quite burned down hut and realize the entire village is already up, already working, and, somehow, cheerful. Today is Mound Day. You'd heard whispers about this. Not just a routine farming task, but a whole community event. The mound isn't just decoration. It's not even just religious. It's the heart of the Mississippian world, political, spiritual, ceremonial, and architectural, all rolled into a very large pile of dirt. And your body, sore and blistered as it is expected to help make it a little bigger. You trudge to the central plaza, where woven baskets are being loaded with dirt from the riverbanks. One after another, villagers hoist these loads onto their shoulders and carry them to the mound's edge. There, they pour the dirt and tamp it down with smooth wooden tools until the mound's flank gets just a little more defined. You're handed a basket that weighs roughly the same as a small alpaca. You stagger forward, feet dragging, trying not to let your knees give out. Around you, even the smallest kids are pitching in, tossing handfuls of pebbles to reinforce the edges or lining walkways with clay. Historians still argue whether every member of society was required to help with mound building or if certain classes were more involved than others. Today, you are firmly in the everyone suffers equally camp. As you struggle up the slope, you wonder, why go through all this? Why spend weeks, months, even years building giant earth monuments? Then you reach the top. The view alone is almost worth it. From the mound's peak, the entire settlement unfolds below you like a woven mat. The concentric rings of fields, the river sparkling in the morning light, the dark squares of storage huts, the ceremonial plazas, it all seems deliberate. Ordered. Sacred. A man beside you, one of the elders, taps his walking stick against the ground. This is where the sky meets the earth, he says, and you believe him. He explains that the mounds align with certain celestial events, the solstice sun rising between twin peaks, the moon brushing the edge of the distant hills. It reminds us where we are, he says simply. It keeps time. You think about how your phone does that for you back home, blinking and buzzing and nagging with notifications. This is quieter, but it sticks with you more. Of course, the mound has practical uses too. In floods, it's a refuge. In ceremonies, it's a stage. In politics, it's a throne. The chief, called the Miko, lives in a structure atop the tallest mound, a constant, elevated presence over the community. Not a tyrant, more like a weather vane with opinions. The Mississippians were hierarchical, yes, but also deeply communal. The mound isn't just the Miko's house, it's everyone's shared effort. Like a massive dirt resume for the ancestors to admire. You're pulled from your reverie by a shout. Your basket is rolling down the slope. Again. Someone fetches it with a grin and slaps more dirt into it. Back to work. As the sun climbs, the mound becomes a furnace. Sweat slicks your arms, and your neck itches from tiny biting flies that laugh at your homemade bug paste. Made from ashes and something sticky you'd rather not ask about. Still, you press on. You ask to help reinforce one of the mound's corners. It's a complicated system, alternating layers of soil, gravel, and clay. Like a giant layer cake, except if you tried to eat it, you'd lose teeth. Every handful of dirt has a purpose. Every layer means something. Some archaeologists have found exotic materials embedded in mounds, mica from the Appalachians, shells from the Gulf, obsidian from the Rockies. That means extensive trade, hundreds of miles across the continent. You stare at a pale, spiral shell being embedded into the southern edge of the platform. This one, someone says, came from the sea. And here it is now, part of a mountain of memory. By midday, the singing has returned. This time, you try joining in. You don't know the words, but you hum along. Someone hands you a carved gourd filled with a cool, herbal drink, tastes like mint and crushed leaves and something slightly bitter. You gulp it down anyway. You're finally getting the hang of it. Then the sky darkens. Not metaphorically, actual dark clouds roll in like a slow approaching stampede. The wind shifts. The air tastes metallic. A summer storm. There's a scramble to cover tools, gather baskets, pull children away from high ground. The mound, magnificent and massive, is also a lightning target. You rush down the slope, nearly tripping on a loose rock, and take shelter in one of the low huts that serve as temporary storage. Around you, the village braces itself. Chickens squawk. Dogs vanish. The wind howls. And then it hits. Rain slams into the thatch. Thunder cracks open the sky. The river, placid just hours before, froths and seethes. You huddle with a few others in the dark, passing a half-finished gourd of roasted squash, trying to pretend you're not terrified. Because you're not used to this. No walls. No roofs. No forecasts. No safety net. Just nature and the people who refuse to be broken by it. When the storm finally passes, the village stirs. People emerge from hiding like sprouts after a frost. There's damage. Mudslides at the mound base, a few broken storage bins, some crushed crops. But nothing they haven't handled before. Everyone gets to work, and you do too. You're handed a new basket. You sigh, then smile. Because somehow, this is starting to feel normal. That night, the moon rises over the freshly patched mound, casting long silver shadows over the wet ground. People light small fires in the plaza. They tell stories, some funny, some eerie, one that involves a giant bird and a very stubborn grandmother. You lie back on the cool, damp earth, blinking at the stars. You made it through another day. You even helped raise a mound. You still wouldn't survive a full moon cycle, obviously. But if this was your last day, it wouldn't be the worst way to go. You sit quietly, feeling the steady pulse of the land beneath you. You're tired. You're dirty. You think back to the pests, the fire, the flood, the mound, and the hard, aching labor of each day. You think about the community that rallied around you, teaching, laughing, sharing. You realize that surviving here isn't about conquering nature, it's about becoming part of its story. And that's okay. Because right now, in this soft rain and gentle light, you belong. The Mississippian way wasn't about winning every day. It was about showing up, working with what you had, and honoring the rhythms of the earth. You close your eyes. The night waits. You are exactly where you need to be. Now, as you settle deeper into your bed, or maybe just a soft spot in your own world, let the rhythm of the land you've walked with today gently fade into your mind. Imagine the warm earth beneath your fingers, the cool breeze brushing your skin, and the steady, patient growth of corn reaching toward the sky. This ancient world, with its quiet struggles and vibrant ceremonies, invites you to breathe a little slower, to feel the pulse of time itself. Though you might never last a full moon cycle as a Mississippian corn farmer, you carry a piece of their story with you. A story of resilience, harmony, and deep connection to the land. So, let your thoughts drift like leaves on a gentle stream, soft and steady. Imagine the flicker of fires in the village at dusk, the singing of the people, and the scent of fresh earth after rain. Rest now, knowing that the past holds its secrets close but also offers its wisdom freely, like the three sisters supporting one another through every season. May your dreams be as peaceful as the moonlit fields, and may you wake with the quiet strength of those who lived and loved under the same stars. Sleep well, time travelers, and I'll see you next time.